Hey guys, so we are doing things a little differently this week. You guys are going to be watching this recording and then you're going to work yourself through some self-directed bits and bobs for me. It's an asynchronous week. I do have to be off this week for a medical procedure, but I hope to be back at my desk on Friday and able to hop on discussion board and answer emails and all that good stuff. So I am sorry that I'm not going to be with you guys for a couple of days, but this little recording is my way of making sure that I still get to kind of chat to you. I'll miss the interactive discussion, um, but just trying to still be sort of present for you in whatever way I can this week. So this is a pretty straightforward week. We're focusing on APA formatting, just making sure that we really kind of strengthen the mechanics of your writing, the formatting of your writing. This is going to serve you very well on the final project, but also in all of your classes. So let's get going. Before we start talking about APA specifically, we are just going to give you a couple little reminders, little confidence boosters as the final project for this class, IND500, is concerned. So just as a reminder, you've actually already done or you are currently doing really kind of the foundational things that you need to be successful on this final project. So you should really be going into this feeling quite confident. You've practiced writing in an analytical style for your critical analysis paper. As a reminder, that's a different topic than your final research paper. You're choosing a different core idea, you're choosing a different medium. But you are still using those skills of pulling a core idea, of analyzing a piece of media. In the case of the critical analysis, it might have also been a current event, but of analyzing something as it relates to a core idea that you've taken from the reading. You're really engaging with these ideas, practicing bringing your own kind of voice and perspective into your writing while writing in an academic tone. So this is a great foundation. That is basically what you're doing in the final project paper as well. You're just adding some external research to bolster that, and it's a bit of a longer paper. But fundamentally, you are analyzing a chosen piece of media as it relates to the core idea you've selected from the readings. And you already know how to do that, which is awesome. For the final project presentation, you're going to present the same information. You're just going to adapt that communication to be in a presentation designed for a public audience. So rather than being an academic paper, it'll be a public audience presentation. So you'll get to practice changing tone, changing the way that you format the information, changing the way that you cite information. It won't have to be so rigidly APA. So most of today when we're talking APA is really going to be supporting you in your writing of academic papers. Just taking a little beat to remind you guys that you also will have had some practice from your list 2 responses in making presentations, in doing things that are a little less formal. In that list 2 response, in the proposal, you also have already gotten feedback on your identified topic. Your proposals are due this week, so you don't have feedback on, say, that drafted intro or the sources that you've chosen just yet, but you have started doing that work and you're about to get that feedback. So that's what I'll be doing while I'm recovering, is I'll be reading all your gorgeous proposals. And I'll be trying to get those back to you just as quickly as I can. In the upcoming weeks, you are going to have time to work on a draft. So week 11 lecture is pretty short next week because I do want you guys to really take seriously the opportunity to write a draft, because then come week 12, it's a work period and your final papers are due at the end of that week. But I don't want you to use that work period to just like whip off your final paper and submit it. I actually want you to consider signing up for a consultation, a one-on-one with me, having already come up with a draft in week 11. I want you to bring that draft to the week 12 work period so we can actually look at it together. We can refine it, and then you can make revisions and feel so good about what you submit come Friday at the end of week 12. If you don't have a draft in week 12 and you still want to book a consult with me to ask questions, to get some feedback on, say, a rougher outline or your general direction, you can totally use those consultation slots in that way as well. If you go into the week 12 module, there will be a Google Doc where you can sign up for one of those consultation spots. If we run out, just email me and we can find an alternative time. It's rare that they all get booked, to be honest. As I mentioned, your final research essay is going to be due at the end of week 12, and then your final research presentations, again, just same research, but converted for public audience. So think the difference between Brown, Judith, between Brown talking about Ernst Bloch versus Stephen West, the podcaster, talking about Ernst Bloch. That's what I mean when I'm making this distinction between an academic paper versus a public audience presentation. In terms of tone, it's still academic content, it's still intellectual, but your presentation is just going to be geared toward a wider audience and a little more zhuzh, a little more flair to it. Not that academic papers aren't entertaining, but presentations tend to be more so. And we are going to watch those in weeks 13 and 14, which means that they need to be locked and loaded before class on week 13. Okay. This is incorrect. The semester ends Friday, April 17th. I clearly just haven't updated this from a past semester. So let's get into our APA content. Hopefully you guys can't hear Michael the dog grumbling beside me, which he's very loud right now. I apologize if you can, but that's what that is. It's just the dog. Say hi, Michael. Where are you, buddy? Anyway, here we go. Close my window. Nobody needs to see me in natural light. That is glaring. I am way too pale for that amount of sunlight. And it just bounces right off me. There she goes. Okay. So, just as a reminder, what you're going to do this week when you're working through the module, you're watching this little recording, of course, and then you are going to do a brief, say 13-ish minute workshop, which is pretty basic intro to MLA and APA from Seneca Library. I want you to focus on APA, of course, but it's always just a good refresher on kind of the basics of citations. It is a YouTube link, which means that you can adjust the playback speed. So it actually only takes me about 7 minutes to watch it because I watch it at double time because for me it's just a refresher. If you're less confident, watch it at normal speed. Really take your time with it. Pause it, play with it, do the things. But yeah, you can manage your time accordingly. Then you have the guides from Seneca Library and Owl at Purdue, also linked out. I just want you guys to take a quick glance out at those, make sure that you've kind of played around and you know how to look for different types of sources. The reason I include both, Seneca Library is amazing. Obviously, we love them. We appreciate them. The reason I like Purdue University's APA guide as well, which is from OWL, is what they call sort of their that branch of the university. Branch isn't the department. Anyway, they just have a breadth of examples. Like they'll include some of the weirder sort of bits and bobs, like how to cite YouTube videos that are maybe like also posted through like a journalist article. So things like that can be a little bit trickier to know how to cite. And sometimes they won't have exactly the same type of citation or source that you have found, but they'll generally have something that's sort of similar enough that you can use it as a model. And just remember that the whole point of a citation, of a reference entry, is that your reader or your assessor, so me, your peers, that we could actually use that information from your in-text citation to go to your references list, find the full reference entry, and from that reference entry, I should be able to very easily make my way to the original source that you used if I want more information. And so ultimately, as long as your citations and your references are serving that purpose, that very important purpose, then you're not going to get majorly dinged. There can be little formatting things that are a little bit off here and there because maybe it's a type of source that just isn't commonly referenced and it's hard to know how to do it correctly. But if it's serving its purpose of taking me back, if I'm like, okay, you know what? I don't know if you should have made the author the TED Talk or the actual speaker. Like, I don't know if the first part of this reference entry should be TED Talk or if it should be Owens, Thomas. But what I do know is that when I look at your in-text citation, it's, TED Talk 2020 12:38. And then when I go to the references, I see TED Talk, Thomas Owens, Loss of Privilege is the title of the TED Talk. It's telling me the timestamp that 12-minute, 38-second in the in-text citation. So now I know when I go to the full reference entry and I go to that hyperlink, oh, I can jump ahead to what the in-text citation said for that direct quote. And boom, I'm there. I found exactly what I needed using those two pieces of information you provided. You're golden, right? Even if we weren't 100% confident how to cite something that was a little bit obscure, I got where I needed to using the information you provided, and it was easy and straightforward and clear. So OWL at Purdue is going to give you examples that are varied enough that you'll be able to find something close enough, and we'll be able to do just that. Okay, it'll be able to serve its purpose, even when you kind of find something weird. And if you're not sure, email me and I'll help you make our best guess. So what you and I are going to do in this little recording is we're actually going to kind of change gears a little bit, and we're going to look at APA formatting from a bit of a different way, because the library is going to cover the nuts and bolts of citations, and you're going to have the guides to look up specific examples. What I want to take a minute to talk about is how do we weave our citations into our actual narrative, because this is what students struggle with and complain about quite often. I'll often have students who, maybe start a paragraph saying where the source material was, or they just put a citation at the very end. But as a reader, I can't assume that every point from that paragraph came from something that you've only actually indicated once at the beginning or the end. The flip of that is, as a reader, it's not very pleasant for me to see at the end of every single sentence, Winterson 2021, Winterson 2021. And students don't like writing that way either, and it messes with your word limit, and it jams up the flow of your essay. So we're just going to play a little bit with how to work it into our actual sentence structure. I'm also going to, just for the sake of a little brain teaser, practice, whatever we want to call it, I'm going to show a couple of common APA mistakes that we can then fix and do a little revision. So in terms of flow first, in her essay, A Loom with a View, Jeanette Winterson, 2021, discusses parallels between the Industrial Revolution in England and the current data revolution taking place in the modern world. Reflecting on the ways that the mechanization of work changed culture and working conditions, Winterson states, the fact is that the first 50 years of the Industrial Revolution were years of unprecedented misery as well as unprecedented innovation. And it wasn't just factory hell. She goes on to explain, ... Just imagine that this paragraph is going to continue. So in terms of narrative flow, what I just want to point out is it's hopefully a little more conversational, because I'm saying in her essay, I'm introducing the title of the essay, Jeanette Winterson. Yeah, I have to throw the year in there in parentheses, but it's a little less disruptive than having a lot of information in parentheses. I'm paraphrasing first what that essay was talking about. And then because I am going to work the author's name into my next sentence in a narrative flow, I don't actually need to restate the 2021 again. It'll be clear enough that I'm still talking about the same essay. So I've paraphrased what the essay was about. Then my second sentence, reflecting on the ways mechanization of work changed culture and working conditions, Winterson states. So by restating the author's name to introduce the quote that I want to use, I'm just building very clearly on the information that I've already cited. So I gave the essay title, the author's name, and the year of publication in a narrative way while paraphrasing in my first sentence. Then I refer back to the author in my second sentence before getting into a quote. And then in that last sentence there that I don't finish, but I start off, I say, she goes on to explain. Because I've started that last sentence in that way, I don't need to throw another citation on that sentence either, because she goes on to explain, or the author continues to state that. It's very clear that I am still building upon information from that first reference. So these are some little tricks that can help us mix up the way that we format our citations and work it into our sentences with a little bit more flow and a little less disruption for the reader. Now, just for funsies, I did make 2 APA mistakes here on purpose. There could be more, but the 2 that I made on purpose, I want you guys to just take a second, give this a look. See if you can spot them. Okay. So just make a mental note of whatever your guesses are, and we're going to come back to this. So just to summarize, as I was saying a second ago, one of the problems that students struggle with is if you only put the one in-text citation at the end of a paragraph, it's not clear where the ideas from the beginning are coming from. And this is from Berkeley College's library. Sort of, again, just some tips around how to cite things that you're referring to multiple times. The best way to solve this problem and make your paper readable is to use a lead-in referring to your source. So we did that, right? And then, yeah, use the lead-in. So that first sentence saying, in her essay, A Loom with a View, Winterson 2021, talks about the Industrial Revolution. So that is what we can call a lead-in that introduces the source in a narrative way. Then alternate that with in-text citations that are in parentheses at the end of other sentences or at the end of the paragraph. Try to make it clear in sentences that they are linked to the same source that you're already discussing. So according to, they also say, the article then goes on to conclude. As long as it's clear in your narrative, you don't need to keep repeating the in-text citation. If you feel like it's becoming a little less clear, maybe you're talking about two different sources in the paragraph and it starts to get tricky to really clearly identify which one, then maybe you do throw in the author's last name, or maybe you do revert to using your parenthetical in-text citations. But for the most part, these are just some little reminders and giving you some specific phrases here. So according to, they also state, that article concludes. These are nice little tricks that you can make a note of to actually just build it in to your sentences. Okay, and the link is there if you did want to check out more from this article at Berkeley. It was quite good. Some more advice from Berkeley. So the best way to solve this problem is still make your paper easy to read. So we've talked about using that lead-in sentence, making it clear in each following sentence. They also state, however, so the reason I'm apparently repeating myself here is to make this important note. If you give a direct quote, even if it's clear you're still talking about the same source, you are going to need to add the page number in parentheses. So we are going to have to come back to some more structured APA traditional parenthetical citations when we start using direct quotes. Paraphrasing makes it a lot easier to just sort of keep that narrative moving using these kind of helpful trick phrases, right? According to the authors, blah, blah, blah. According to Winterson, blah, blah, blah. Winterson goes on to talk about do. But the minute that I use a quote, I'm going to need to give a page number. So what were my two mistakes? Let's see. So I have made an update here. The two mistakes have been corrected. So first, I'm going to go through this narrative flow again, and then I'll point out those corrections. So in her essay, A Loom with a View, Jeanette Winterson, 2021, discusses parallels between the Industrial Revolution in England and the current data revolution taking place in the modern world. Reflecting on the ways that the mechanization of work changed culture and working conditions, Winterson states, the fact is that the first 50 years of the Industrial Revolution were years of unprecedented misery as well as unprecedented innovation, and it wasn't just factory hell. 2021, page 46, period. She goes on to explain, Okay, you ready for this? This is the excitement, the unveiling, what you've been waiting for. What were those mistakes? Well, let me tell you. So first of all, the title, A Loom with a View. As an essay, it just gets quotation marks. It does not need to be italicized. If it were a book title, then it would be italicized and it would not get quotation marks. So that's the distinction. Book titles, we italicize. Essays, articles, we do quotes. Now, because I've given the year in my lead-in sentence, technically, I do not need to restate the year after my quote. I could just give the page number because it is perfectly clear that I am still talking about the same article. I've just thrown the year in here as a little bit of overkill because sometimes when we're a little bit newer to APA, we just really like to cover our bases. And hey, maybe there is a chance that I'm talking about multiple sources of Jeanette Winterson throughout my essay. And this, I just want to make sure that I'm being crystal clear. That can happen also, especially in the final project when we are building out our sources a little bit more. In this instance, I didn't need the year. The other thing that I've done here, which was not really a mistake in the first one, because I didn't have the parenthetical citation after the quote in the first one to work with, but I just want to draw your attention to it because it's a very common mistake that students make. The period actually goes after the citation. So it would look a little bit funny if I had the period inside the quote, even though that does correctly reflect Winterson's writing, right? After the word hell, there should be a period. But because I need to give my citation, I fudge it and I wait and I don't put the period until after the parentheses. So that's just so that we don't have this citation sort of like floating. It's very clear that think of a period as sort of holding information in its unit. A sentence is like a unit of information, and the period is what kind of holds it in. This parenthetical citation belongs with that unit. So I want the period to be holding it in with the information, with the quote. Okay. And then she goes on to explain, blah, blah, blah. Again, I'm not going to need another citation to go with that. Very clear that I'm referring to the same source. All right. So that was just a real quick, fun, little playing with APA, helping our flow. The final project proposals, as a reminder again, they are due this Friday. I will try to get those back to you just as quickly as possible. Go take a look at the expectations, which also serve as a template. It's all in Blackboard. If you do have any questions, you can add questions to the discussion board that I've created to serve as a bit of a forum, because questions can benefit us all. Of course, if it's a more specific to you question, feel free to just email me. Week 11, we're going to talk about how important writing drafts is. And then don't forget to book yourself a consultation to hopefully look at a draft or just ask some questions and get some feedback come week 12. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Again, I'm sorry I couldn't be with you this week, but I look forward to seeing y'all back in class next week. Bye. Take good care.